All right, we had some left over from last week that I didn't get to. I'll start off with them, Pastor Steve. First one's from Tom. Let me throw it up behind me. And he says, in Revelation 4:4, do you have any insight on who these 24 elders are in Revelation 4:4? What would you say to Tom?
Well, Tom, when you're talking about 24 in the Bible, usually a lot of times what people will do is they'll go, okay, well, 24. We don't really have 24 a lot, but we do have 12, and so you have the 12 tribes of Israel in the Old Testament, and you have 12 apostles in the New Testament. And so some guys have said that maybe it's the tribes of Israel and the elders from the tribes of Israel and then the 12 apostles. And so that's a possibility because it doesn't actually say exactly who they are. Problem with that is if you're talking about the 12 apostles, who were they? And the first three that people almost always name are Peter, James, and John. Well, John's the guy who's seeing the vision. So is John looking at himself? And he could be. That could be a possibility. That's kind of weird, because he keeps talking to these elders. The elders come up and talk to him throughout the book of Revelation, and it might be weird to have one of them be you and come up and talk to you. So there's that. There is a.
That is so weird. That's like what's that movie Interstellar, where you're like meeting yourself in the future or something?
Yeah.
Sorry, you just tripped me out.
So there's another option, and there is a place where 24 is mentioned, and it's not the number 24 in the sense that it talks about 24 elders or whatever, but in the Old Testament, in it's got to be Second Chronicles chapter 24. And it's good because 24 and 24 go together. So 2 Chronicles chapter 24, it is the courses of the priesthood. And so David, when he set up temple worship, he divided the singers in the temple into 24 groups. And they would go through and they would worship in the temple on different dates. And so those were called the 24 courses of the priesthood. And what it's talking about is when you were in one of these family groups, you got to go into the temple 2 times a year, and that's when you would go in and serve, okay? And so when they would talk about 24 elders from a Jewish perspective, they're thinking about the 24 elders of the priesthood. It was the picture of the whole priesthood being represented by these guys. And I like that because I'm not playing games with 12 and 12. You're actually talking about 24, and it's from the Bible, and it's not something that some guy is just making up. The other thing that you see with this is that they're sitting on thrones, and so sitting on thrones is it's a representation that these are kings. The other thing you see about this is these guys are clothed in white, and so the white can be the righteous acts of the saints, so that it can just be talking about them being believers, but that's what priests were clothed in also. They were clothed in white linen. So you have the number 24, which was connected with the priesthood. You have the clothing that's connected with the priesthood, and then you have the fact that they're sitting on thrones, and that's connected with being a king. Kings sit on thrones, obviously. The other thing that they have is crowns on their heads, and normally you would say, well, crowns are for kings too, but it's not diadema in Greek. It's the word stephanos in Greek is the term that's used for crowns. And it's a victor's crown. It's the idea of in the ancient Olympics, when you won, they didn't give you a trophy, they gave you a crown. They gave you a wreath that you put around your head that was called a stephanos, and it's a victor's crown. So these are guys who are sitting on thrones as kings, looks like they're priests, and they have victor's crowns. And that's something that describes the church. The Bible teaches that we're priests and kings. In fact, these guys later on, they talk about the fact that Jesus has made them priests and kings. It says in verse 9 of chapter 5, you are worthy to take the scroll to open its seals, for you were slain and have redeemed us to God by your blood. And so these are people who are redeemed. That means bought out of slavery to sin. So these were sinners, redeemed to God by your blood, out of every tribe and tongue and people and nation. And so that means it's not confined to Israel. And then it says, and we've been made and have made us kings and priests to our God, and we shall reign on the earth. Those are all descriptions of the church. And so when I look at Revelation chapter 4 and you see the 24 elders, I believe that that's a symbolic representation of the church standing before God and worshiping. In fact, what they do is they take their crowns off their heads. It says, verse 9, of chapter 4, whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to him who sits on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him who sits on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, you are worthy, O Lord. And so they're taking their crowns off their heads and they're throwing them at the feet of Jesus. Well, the crown is my reward. If it's the reward that you see in the New Testament where we're given crowns, that's our rewards. And when we're given those rewards, we recognize that the reason that our lives have changed is not because we've been so good as far as being Christians. It's because Jesus has changed us from the inside out. He's the one who's making us like him. And so the reward belongs to him. So casting crowns is what you're doing. It's what the band was named after. And so I think that that's a representation of the church.
By literal 24 people representing us, or more of like a picture?
It may be 24 people
So
representing us.
Abraham and Moses and
Hall
Hall of Faith guys.
Well, actually, we're talking about the church, so it would be New Testament.
I mean, so it'd be Paul and apostles
I don't know.
type of guys.
It could be people down through the ages. Billy Graham might be one of these guys. It could be Aunt Maud, who's been praying in her little back room for every evangelist in the world. So,
all right. Thanks, Tom, for posting that.